What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Nissim. With me, as always, is my main man, Mr. David Fuchs.
What's going on, Joe?
David is in the Bay, kind of. His background is in the Bay.
Yeah.
He's feeling a Steph Curry, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's funny that you said Steph Curry. Although I'm sure this is why you said it, but I got the Bay in the background, and I'm actually in Charlotte. So,
But
which
that's where
which
that's where
probably
Davidson is, right?
yeah, well, that's where I don't Davidson is in North Carolina. I don't know. It's not. It's near. I think it's near Charlotte. Honestly, I don't know where. I don't want to speak to Charlotte or to North Carolina topography geography, but.
Topography.
Um, Yeah, but it's somewhere in North Carolina, but obviously he grew up in the North Carolina area. I think his dad either played for the Hornets
Yeah, his
or
dad played for the Hornets. Yeah.
and then I think he does the commentary for them now. So like he's not the play-by-play. I think he does the analysis on their local network. So I'm guessing by your reaction you said Steph Curry for that reason because I'm in Charlotte and I
You're
got
in
the bet.
Charlotte. You're in his home, and his brother plays for the Hornets now too.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of Curries in there. So let's talk about this today. We were chatting a little bit about this before we turned the camera on. We're now at the uh, end of the CFP cycle. I think everybody's probably done tomorrow with the exam. I think our last exam takers are tomorrow, and we're kind of seeing our first group of passes and fails come in. And obviously, we've talked about this before, but and I know we're going to break this into a little mini series here. What do you think is where most people trip up with this exam? Why do you think that if you're sitting here right now and maybe you're watching this and you're kind of down in the dumps and you're feeling crappy about your exam process and you gotta fail, what do you think is the number one reason that people fail this test?
Well, like you mentioned, we're going to do a series with this. So there's a
Right.
few that you and I always agree on for like the top three-ish reasons why people fail. For this one today, we'll stick with, I'm not saying this is number one, but this is the one that we're going to kick off this uh, little mini series with. And it's, a lot of times people make the process a lot more complicated than it needs to be
Mm.
and they don't, keep it as simple as possible. And by simple, I don't mean you're doing easy work, but when you formulate that plan in your head and the strategy and whatever your prep process is going to be, you don't overcomplicate it, and whatever you come up with, you stick with it through the end. I think some one thing,
What do you mean by that? Like what are they overcomplicating?
um, overcomplicating, I think the tools that they use, first of all.
Hmm.
So they have to do this flashcard, these set of flashcards, and that testing service, and the mock quiz over here, and all these different things that they think that just having a plethora of material is going to help them learn it. That's one thing when I say that. Um, the other thing is in terms of, overcomplicating things is not you know, let me throw it back to you.
You need a minute on that one?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think I think your statement is valid. I think that the one thing that people don't do, and I think this is where it gets overcomplicated, is the second that the prep gets uncomfortable or you're not doing as well as you thought you were going to do. And I think everybody kind of goes in with this expectation, right? If I read and if I read the book and then I do some quizzes, I'm going to be able to score well. And then you take a hard quiz and you get your ass absolutely fucking handed to you. And that's where I think the overcomplication starts to happen. Like, and people start doing weird things. Um, I've had people tell me that they keep a notebook of every wrong question and they write it down. And I'm
That's
like,
that's very intense.
right? I'm like, that's great. I mean, I appreciate the effort, but are you moving the needle? Some people are like, I screenshot every wrong answer I've ever gotten and I print it out and then I look at it every day. And I'm
That's
like,
like that's insane.
right. And so, like, you start to see these things that, like, people overcomplicate the process by doing all these odd things. I bought this, and like you said, I bought this set of quick sheets, and then I bought this quiz bank, and then I bought this, and then I bought this, and then I do this, and then I do this. And like anything else, if you're spread out that thin, it's impossible to do anything with quality. And I think this is one of the hardest things about the exam is not overcomplicating. It is keeping it simple because when you think about the 170 question exam, you think that my process has to be as complicated as this. Right? The exam is complicated. Well, the exam is complicated doesn't mean that your process needs to be. Your process can be simple, but I tend to think that the more uncomfortable you are in your prep process, where it feels like I'm not doing, oh my God, like, holy crap, like I'm so uncomfortable all the time. My skin is crawling because I'm so uncomfortable because I'm constantly doing things I don't want to do. It's not fun doing your flashcards every day. There's nothing glamorous about that. There's nothing glamorous about going over the same flashcard 8 times. When I would study for CFA, I would read the same paragraph sometimes like 6 times. I'm like, why? I can't get this to stick. Like, please, please just stick. Right. And it was so uncomfortable and you feel so stupid, but that's the process. And I think when you embrace that process, it's simple. It's not easy to read the same thing over and over again. It's simple. It's not easy to do
Mhm.
have the discipline to do your flashcards every day. It's simple, but it's not easy. But it's also the only way that you really move the needle. That in my opinion is where people overcomplicate it versus going simple on it.
Uh, so I had a complete brain lapse however many minutes ago was at this point. I remember what I wanted to say as my second point there.
That's what I'm here,
So
baby. For. That's what I'm here for you, David. I spark
yeah,
it. I spark the juices.
so I just want to go back to that. So what I was gonna say as my second point was, not just using all different types of tools, but one thing that I think people that I know this messed me up too sometimes, or it messes me up sometimes too, but a lot of times people they do have a really good strategy, they have a good plan on how they're going to achieve whatever they're going to achieve, and then they hear this person's doing that and that person's doing this,
Mm.
and you start thinking to yourself, oh wait, am I doing enough? And or am I doing the right things? And you start questioning yourself, and then you start changing your routine, and then you start changing some of those of the process that you put in place. And listen, sometimes that's going to work because you do pick up some things that are beneficial, but a lot of times it's almost like changing your answer. They tell you not to change your answer on the exam. Just go with like your original plan, your original gut. This can cause too much chaos for you throughout the process.
What a great point, dude. That's something I actually, I always tell people like stick to your process. And this is actually it's a great point because this came up in class the other day where a student of mine goes, I think I go too fast on the exam. I said, he's like, should I go at X student speed? And I was like, and the other student that he's referencing goes really slow. Like that's just the way he is. That's like his entire cadence. And I was like, no. Yeah, I was like, if you're fast, maybe slow it down a tad just so you're not missing words and you're reading the sentence. But if your natural inclination is doing things quickly, don't fight that. Don't rush, but don't fight that.
Hmm.
If your process means that you learn really well when you read, but you heard somebody else is watching videos. That doesn't give you the right to jump and do what somebody else is doing just
Hmm.
because that's particularly working for them or they've had some short term success. Right. And as advisors, we should know this, right? If you start chasing performance, you're always behind. Right. It's like, oh, this mutual fund did 24% last year. Okay, let's invest in that one. Well, it did a -8 this year. Oh, damn it. And what you're not factoring in is that you got to stick to the process that addresses your weaknesses, that's built for you, and that and at this point in your life, hopefully you know what type of learner you are. And if you don't, that's when you hire somebody to help you figure that out and what you need to address. Because if you start going at somebody else's pace, don't go at somebody else's pace, go at your pace. Don't do somebody else's study plan, do your study plan. Because you might look at your study plan and go, that's too boring. I don't want to do flashcards. If your fundamentals are crap, do your flashcards. And I think Dave, man, you made such a good point that hearing other things that people did, and now you start trying to integrate every little tip and trick that you hear, and you know, hopefully this podcast is somewhere where you can come and start clearing up the things in your brain instead of taking away more things that you need to be doing. I think that's what a lot of people do with the internet and YouTube in general is I take a little bit from here and a little bit from here, a little bit from here and a little bit from here and a little bit from here, but there's no cohesive process.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that um with the exam, yeah, I think that and I think that that's true actually, not just with the exam. I think that's true with a lot of things. And I just remember, I think the best example of this is like when you were in high school or middle school or whatever, and you're taking a test and everybody takes the test in the classroom and people start getting up to hand in the test, you know,
Yeah.
and you're like, shit, like they're all done already. Like everybody's getting up. You're like, what am I doing wrong that I'm taking longer? It's that you start building that anxiety, you start rushing. So I think that the overall kind of theme is don't make this, it's already a complicated process. It's going to be hard enough. If you can at least minimize the amount of chaos that you'll have when it comes to your process and just stick with a simple plan and don't fray from it, it's only going to make it easier for you. As opposed to if you start changing all this shit up halfway through, it's going to make the difficult process seem that much worse or that much more complicated.
I agree, and I think that's where we should end. So, take those words because what David just said is such a great example. It's if you start kind of pulling a little bit from every person and everything that you do, and you see people do this at the gym, you see them do it with tests, you see them do it with money. They invest a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. Then they come in with a portfolio full of a bunch of incomplete thoughts,
Hmm.
right? And so if that is your study plan, then obviously it's going to get you nowhere. So guys, as always, we hope that you found this episode helpful. Any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to reach out to Dave or myself. Please like and subscribe to the show, and we'll see you guys on the next show.